With me is Patrick McKenna, and since 2017, May 2017, Pat has led the company's brand positioning, long-term strategy, development, and all consumer communications and content for Mini. He began working with BMW Group in 1993 as an agency employee and joined the company in-house in 1997. So our focus today is going to be on a program that they've been doing called Mini Takes the States. And I think to set it up best, we should probably show the video, and then you can get an idea of what it looks like.
The Mini community really is something special. I really haven't seen a community this vast and also this friendly. Everybody from all walks of life coming together and talking to each other like they've known each other for years. Pretty heartwarming. Really makes you feel part of the family.
So what the video fails to show you is that I was there. I kept looking for myself, and I don't know, I just didn't make it, I guess, in the final edit or whatever, but I flew into Oklahoma City and joined up with the tour. It was already in progress with the rally, and drove from Oklahoma City to Dodge City, Kansas, which I'd never been to Kansas before. Cool place. And then from there to Firestone. Firestone was where we ended. That was like where both of the two sides of the country came together, and we had our big party at the end, and I got to meet all the owners. And it was just, I've written about it for years, and I couldn't really verbalize what it was going to be like until I was actually experiencing it, because that level of loyalty is just incredible. I mean, I've never seen owners that into their cars, and I think, one of my friends was actually on the tour, and I guess I can say this, she's not here, she's a General Motors employee, and she bought her daughter a Mini, and they did the entire country. They did one into the other, and she loves the brand, even though she works for a competing automaker. So let's talk a little bit about it. How did Mini Takes the States come about, and how has the event changed and grown over the years?
So first of all, it's great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. So it started in 2006, and one of the presenters from before was saying he had a young brand of 29 years, I think, for Infiniti. So Mini actually started in 1959. But really wasn't sold in this country from 1967 until 2002. So we really are a 16-year-old brand, so we're still relatively young. And back in 2006, we had a really special high-performance Mini that was being launched. And some of my predecessors came up with the idea as a way to indoctrinate these new owners into the family, so to speak. Let's deliver their new cars at Laguna Seca Racetrack in Monterey, and let's deliver the cars there and then drive across the entire country to Lime Rock Racetrack in Connecticut. Like, that would be a good way to welcome them into the family. And that's where it started. So it's every other summer since then. So it's 2006, 8, 10, 12, et cetera. When I first joined Mini, it was about 6 months before the 2012 event, and I shouldn't say this, but the way people refer to it inside the company is Mini Takes My Life, because it takes an enormous amount of planning that goes into it. And I had attended an event a few months after I started, and about 10% of the audience members at this particular event were kind of like maybe complaining about things. Things weren't quite perfect. And I just started to think about the math. There's about 4,000 people who come on this event. So I started to think, like, all right, we're going to have 400 squeaky wheels to take care of. But the reality is when we got onto that one and everyone since, there's really like almost no squeaking wheels. Everyone's thrilled to be there. You're kind of in this realm of suspended reality. And I would almost describe it as Disney-like, you know, that it's people waving to each other on the road. If you're, for some reason, if you have a problem with your car, if you get a flat tire, we're there, we fix it. If we can't fix it immediately, we'll give you a brand new car. We'll give you one of our cars and just say, like, let us fix this. Once I was at a dealership where we were kind of fixing a customer car, and I was explaining to the guy who ran the workshop at one of our dealers, I said, you know, we try to make mini takes estates like Disney. You know, if you drop your ice cream at Disney, people come from behind the scenes and like give you a new ice cream. And this was my way of explaining to a shop foreman at a dealership why, you know, what we're trying to create here. The guy smiles and he says, yeah, I go to Disney every year and a bird flew down, grabbed my ice cream and flew away, and someone came out from behind the scenes and gave me an ice cream, and then it happened again like twice. So he says, I totally understand what you're talking about. So I thought this like silly kind of a analogy, you know, to help explain like why do we, you know, what are we trying to create here? And here I'm talking to a guy who had his ice cream stolen by like a seagull at Disney World. So, but that's kind of like what we try to create. We've done multiple trips where we go coast to coast, so we go east to west, west to east. And this most recent one, this past summer, we decided to do an east route and a west route converging in Colorado. And the reason for that was it's typically a 14-day trip when you, and to cover the country coast to coast in 14 days. It means pretty long days of driving. So what we had heard from our customers was give us shorter days and let us hang out in a city for a few extra days. So that's where the idea came in from. Let's stay in this case, Keystone, Colorado. Let's stay there for 3 days. And people really appreciated the fact that, you know, it was kind of like all leading to this one place where they could hang out and spend time with each other for more than just, you know, 8 hours or 10 hours.
Yeah, and the shorter days were nice because you could stop along the way, and you were talking about Disney. I mean, this was almost like Disney for the whole country because every city we'd stop in, people were just amazed. You know, here, when do 500 cars of a certain kind show up in your tiny little town? You know, we stopped at a diner in Kansas, and it was interesting to see the reaction from people. So how many times have you personally gone on Mini Takes the States, and do you do the entire rally each time that you go?
So I did 12, 14, and 16, so I did the entire route, and that's important for us in terms of, you know, as an executive with the company, like to be out there for 14 days, to see the customers, to hear their feedback is extremely important. It gives transparency to who we are, the people in New Jersey. You can also explain like why you take decisions that you do. So prior to my most recent job, which is for the past year and a half in marketing, before this I was the head of product, the product guy. So I would have people coming up to me saying, so you're the guy who put the window switches, you took it away from the center console and you put it in the doors. And they'll tell you that they don't like that because they like the quirkiness of it. So you get direct feedback. So it's like a focus group on wheels, so to speak. It's, if you think about 4,000 people, we are a small brand, we're a niche brand. So in broad terms, it's like 10% of your owner group out on the road. So it's not 60 minutes behind two-way mirror glass talking to people about, you know, your product through a moderator. It's like you're with people, you're seeing them for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
At the gas station?
Yeah, you're seeing them at the gas station. Some of the things we like to do is, like, if you're lucky enough to be filling up at the gas station or pulling in, like, I will swipe my credit card and pay for your gas. You know, it's just that kind of atmosphere, and it's really for us to say thank you to the customers.
So is it common for other members of the management team to participate in the rally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back in time, the former head of the car company felt very strongly about being out on the road for the duration of it. And he was a brilliant guy, but he was also a practical joker. So I would come back to my hotel room, and there would be like a mannequin like in the bed. So he was like he spared no expense to kind of be a practical joker, and like he would have like water guns on the road. But he said something. He was a brilliant guy, and he said something really interesting to me once. He said, you know, at the time he was saying, like, with companies like Enron, so that's for us, to quote someone from before, for us old timers, you know, whether it's Enron or other companies that have kind of like failed along the way in terms of ethics, he says, for someone to see the executives that run that company and they're like spraying you with water guns, there's something to be said for the fact that these are the honest, kind of authentic people behind the brand. So he kind of, you could say like that's overthinking it, but there's a great opportunity, I think, for us that we put ourselves out there. And for us, the benefit is it recharges our batteries. You know, it's not just, like, quite often we talk about it's not just an appliance. It's not just something that takes you from point A to B. This is a car that people care about, and
there's a lot of emotion attached to that car compared to other cars on the road. I mean, you see a Mini coming down the road, you know, you smile. You tend to smile at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the car has this, you know, this anthropomorphic. It has a face. It is definitely a happy face. It's a smiling face. And you were talking about going into, sometimes you pull into a small town. They've never seen a Mini before. So you're like filling up gas, and then there's like people like, what is that? Mm-hmm. So it's a big country. That's the other thing you learn. In 2012, I had never crossed the entire country.
By car.
Yeah, I had. Yeah, I had been on a plane before, but I had never gone across the country in a car, let alone a Mini. And it just gives you this amazing appreciation for the country, and just the varied terrain. Like, you know, just we were talking before. You know, driving through cornfields in Iowa, it's like for hours and hours, and you smell corn, and it's flat, and you know, I was preceded by outdoor advertising. Outdoor advertising in that part of the country, there's these small, like these little tiny billboards on the side, and it's basically advertising like whose seed is in the ground. That was mind-blowing for a kid from Queens who had never been through like the middle of that farm country. So it's just an amazing experience to just see the vastness of the country.
So what is your favorite part about meeting owners, other than hearing complaints about the switches being moved around?
Yeah, there's certainly that, but I think it's just like what the brand means to them personally. Some of these people have Mini tattooed on their arms. I think to help you understand it, it's probably more of a relationship like Harley Davidson has. You know, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Harley Davidson was a business case study that actually got me into business and advertising, because I was just fascinating that these 11 executives bought the company back. But one of the first things they did was they created this owner group, Harley Owner Group. And I think it was to create this kind of camaraderie amongst the owners. And, you know, so for me, meeting the owners, you get to see, you know, beyond the transaction, you see what it means to them personally. Whether it was they went from not caring about cars to being fanatical, or the fact that, you know, we have some physically challenged people out there, so they might use hand controls. We've had a long-standing policy that if you buy a Mini and you need hand controls, like, we'll pay for it. So I had that person kind of in tears telling me that that car gives her this sense of freedom, it gives us this sense of empowerment, and there's just nothing that you would ever get from a textbook on that, you know, or from data. In many of the things that we do as a brand are very high tech and targeted, but it's great to be in this kind of low tech environment sometimes and just see like what the brand's impact is on people. And I think what's interesting is that when the brand set out in the kind of the reincarnated brand set out in 2002, the agency at the time was Crispin, Porter, and Bugatti, and they had laid out this entire culture that the brand would follow. And as I think back on that, I'm so thankful that they did that, and I think it was really ambitious. So they set out like that, they had this thing called the Book of Motoring. So when you bought the car, you would get this Book of Motoring, and it would say that you should wave to other cars, other Minis, to be more specific. And I think they created this culture so that by the time 2006 came around, there was a following, and then that, you know, so we really see ourselves as just stewards of the culture that has kind of come before us. So we're kind of maintaining it and fostering it.
I was really surprised by the number of owners that I talked to whose families had multiple Minis. You know, like they had one, their wife had one, their kid had one. I just found that astounding, and I don't know if you see that with any other brand. I don't know if people who have multiple Silverados or what, I don't want to say whoever, but you know,
Yeah.
it's just such a loyalty. And let's talk a little bit about the statistics for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Was this year's event the best one yet? And what are some of the, I guess these are the stats that you can share, so.
Yeah, so these are some of the stats just to give you a sense of like just the geography we covered, 2,500 miles from the east and the west. We raised 1.1 million meals for Feeding America. I think there's like a natural camaraderie amongst the owners, so we want to put that to good use. So we've been with Feeding America for the past 2 events. Before that, Best Friends, Animal Society. Before that, the Olympics, kind of Paralympics affiliation that we had. So this is very gratifying because you know that you're all out on the road, but you're raising not just the meals, but also awareness. We were in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and we did some really great social content there covering like their local food bank. And it just kind of educated everyone to the fact that when we're off season for the Upper Peninsula, like hunger is a serious issue. So not only do we raise the meals, but we had our customers going through there and volunteering their time, and then we do social content, so that helps things. And then we also have some really nice media coverage. Sometimes we're lucky and we get on the Today Show or something really big, but it's amazing to come into a small town and you're on the 11 o'clock news, and sometimes if the town is really small, like you're the featured story. You're
Front page of the Dodge City, Kansas newspaper, like above the fold, huge story.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's somewhere between the aliens have landed and Minnie has come to town.
So the charitable component is interesting. I know the owners, they compete with each other. I had somebody sell me a fan or something because they were doing a fundraising to try to raise money. Why is that important to the brand?
I think when we get out in front of something like Minnie Takes the Stage, so months before we even have the event, people are getting excited. It takes about 1.5 years to plan one of these because it's a lot of logistics, working with state and local police. Like for 500 cars to leave a location in the morning where we do kind of a breakfast, we call it Rise and Shine, like that wreaks havoc on a town unless they're prepared for it. the nice thing is they close off all the roads so that we can kind of get out of the town and get on the highway. And one of the things that we do is kind of wave them off. So we're waving, they're beeping. It's something all of you should experience. It's just loads of fun. So that's kind of, that creates this, this great atmosphere. And then where Feeding America comes in is, so then the owners are kind of outdoing each other to try to raise money. And sometimes it's for bragging rights. Sometimes it's to stand up on stage in front of their fellow mini customers in the morning and be acknowledged. And it's really that, I think it's that acknowledgement that they all work hard for. And we're certainly the benefactors. And it's nice because all of these people are helping this cause that we feel strongly about. So it's not just the Mini brand, it's Mini and all the customers kind of raising awareness for it.
So you said 18 months planning, right? So have
Yeah.
you started planning the next one? What's
So
next?
we haven't officially started planning for the next one, but I'm always kind of benefit from my boss, who's the head of North and South America for the brand. When he stands up in front of everyone and says, "We'll be back in 2020," that kind of puts the flag down to say, "Okay, let's start to plan for it." So we're probably in the very early stages. One of the big things is planning the route. The route is extremely challenging to plan because the thing that I left out is not only do we go coast to coast, or in this case, converging in Colorado, we're finding the road less traveled. I
and
hope
hotel rooms for all these people
Yeah,
along
yeah.
the road, and
Yeah.
and restaurants,
Yeah.
and all the logistics. I mean,
But it's usually, it's the scenic route. It's the route that is, it's not the interstate unless we have to take the interstate. It typically tends to be the windy roads. It's the roads that are really breathtakingly beautiful. And some are expected and some aren't. Like, I was thinking about it this morning, like the road from, I think it was between Allentown, Pennsylvania and Buffalo, New York was a stunning ride. And I just wouldn't expect it. You end up in some places where there's urban rural, like Allentown, like Buffalo, where you're just blown away by, what has been done with like the old steel mills in Allentown. And that's kind of like, I think a part of our brand is kind of like, kind of this urban renewal kind of, of a vibe for the brand. So there's always kind of unexpected things that we find.
so how does the rally fit into your overall marketing plan, and how has your marketing evolved over the years?
So this really fits into really quite simply, like this is a loyalty initiative. This is our way of saying thank you to our loyal customers. One thing that's interesting, you would expect that this is just the people, the kind of the older customers, like what we call the first generation car back in 2002. You would think it's just those customers coming back again and again. But about 50% of the people are first timers. And it's nice to see that there is like a turnover where we're bringing in people for the first time. We're bringing in people where it's word of mouth from others, where they'll actually go out and buy a car to be able to go on the trip. And sometimes I would call, like, there's a new class of people, like younger retired people they're retired, but they're still really active, still very healthy, and they absolutely love a trip like this, and they will go out and buy the car just to do this trip. So I don't have specific data on that, but I think that's just the anecdotal feedback that we get, where it absolutely is word of mouth. To put it in perspective, the amount of money it takes for this event is probably 3% of our overall marketing budget. We don't typically use this as a way to conquest, so this is purely a loyalty initiative. We don't try to bring in kind of new people. Sometimes we'll do driving events within the event to bring in new people. But you mentioned something to me before that I want to go back to. You used a word that I think is actually spot on, because I asked for some observations of it. Do you remember what the word was?
Oh yeah, it's a little cult-like, you know,
Yeah.
but in a good way, you know, not like in a drink the Kool-Aid way,
Yeah.
but in a good way.
Yeah, it's the word you used before is it's a bit cultish.
Cultish.
Yeah.
Cultish, right.
But it's interesting because these are folks that are young, old, from all walks of life, as you saw in the video, but they get along really well. Like there's really no egos. I think for some other brands, especially on the premium side, if you have car events, you're undoubtedly going to have ego comes in, especially as you get into kind of the more expensive cars. And you're going to get into the ego of my car is better than yours. We don't even see a hint of that. What we see is like just people who are genuinely happy to be there. They're genuinely happy to be part of this community. They are looking at other people's cars. The cars tend to be like no two Minis look alike. They're kind of decked out. There's a lot of customization that happens in the factory, just in building it, and the color schemes. And then there's a lot of just personalization that happens after it.
The Hello Kitty Mini stands out for me, and I think that and the other one I saw was the Beavis and Butthead Mini, where they were coming out through the roof, and I thought, okay, this is like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah, yeah. So it is a bit cultish, but they are so welcoming. They're so happy to be together. They're so happy that we as a company put so much effort. I can't underscore enough. And Karen, I'm not sure Karen is here. Karen is the queen of Mini Takes the States, and it takes a lot of work to put this together and to keep that kind of Disney-like atmosphere out there. And the thing that I would say for all of you, whether you're in a media company or a car company, just think about your core audience. Think about your audience that is so high on your product that they are your evangelicals. You should definitely foster that community. Take that community. I'm sure all of you have a core audience that love your products. And they are an audience that will speak chapter and verse about why your product is amazing. So you just have to like find them and then just foster that. And I think that's what we're blessed with that. We're blessed with people who have really just absolutely fallen in love with this brand. We're fortunate to have them, and we're proud of the fact that we nurture this event. And as I said, the benefits for us is, you know, it recharges our batteries when we spend time with them out on the road. And when someone is standing in front of you, kind of getting choked up, telling you how important it is, it's like the light bulb goes off and says, you know what, this is probably the best 3% of the marketing budget spent. Because programmatic is fantastic, but programmatic will never be standing in front of you, kind of choked up. And we do loads of programmatic, so no disrespect. But it's nice to have this kind of this human element when you get into this part of experiential marketing.
Awesome. I think we're ready to take a couple questions.
All right.
You know, I've been listening to this so intently and just loving it, because like this is, you know, I watch this industry in lots of different categories, and like this is the best of marketing for me. I mean, it's like this virtuous circle, you know, between like consumer and brand, and like everybody kind of gets it, and you're listening to them, and they're kind of evangelizing for you, and the whole thing is like working really well, it sounds like. But my timekeeping was really poor, so we actually don't have time for questions because I was really listening. I thought this is fantastic, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with this in the years to come. I mean, just real quick, is there like a plan for, I don't know, international expansion of this, like a South American version or something?
There was a version in Europe for several years that has kind of fallen off. But yeah, I mean, we would love to, and we've taken a group of US enthusiasts over to Europe to some of those events. But there's nothing of this scale. And what's interesting is we'll have people fly here to take part in this. They'll take part. They'll either rent a car, they'll buy a car just to take it. And we had a few members of our team who actually build the cars in Oxford, England. Those guys came on the trip, and those guys are celebrities. The guys
they
who
were
build,
awesome.
Yeah,
They were like, people wanted their autograph. I mean, they were sought after by all the customers.
And I'll end with one quick story. Those two guys made such an impression on some of the owners that the owners are like, I'm going to buy my 7th car, but is there any way that you can have it signed by yourselves and the other people who work at the plant? So there are two cars being delivered, one east, one west, and they have signatures all over the engine from the people who built the car. So that's where that's where it goes beyond, as I said, just an appliance, where it's just very personal. So thank you.
It's a terrific story. Thanks so much, Pat. Thank you, Tanya.